see all of you here tonight. This is going to be an absolutely marvelous evening to celebrate and honor the life and legacy of the great American, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's great to have you back on campus after what I hope was a marvelously productive and restorative winter break. We missed you and Happy New Year. We're easing into the program just a little bit, you probably noticed, because we're waiting for our speaker who had a little bit of a problem on the road. He is en route. We're getting that taken care of, but we're going to just kind of move into the agenda. And I know, as you always do, you will be flexible with us as we move through this. So thank you in advance for that. Yesterday I had the pleasure of hearing Dr. Riggins Earl, Professor of Ethics and Theology at the Interdenominational Theological Center of the Atlanta University Center, and of course Atlanta, Georgia. He spoke at my church, and he told us of how he, as a young minister, he was in the throngs of people who traveled from Atlanta, Georgia to Washington, D.C. for the historic March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom on August 28, 1963, a long time ago. For context, 1963 was a time of great racial unrest in the U.S. with civil rights protests and marches, sit-ins, and demonstrations throughout the South and through much of the nation. There was nationwide outrage, and it was provoked by coverage of fire hoses and attack dogs being turned against protesters. Of all that Dr. Earl had to say about the Martin Luther King Day and the Civil Rights Movement, he was deeply, deeply emotional and moved as he recalled, how Dr. King took the podium on that sweltering day on the Washington Mall in D.C., standing before well over 250,000 people who made the pilgrimage from all over the United States and beyond. Dr. King began his prepared remarks when Mahalia Jackson, an extraordinary gospel singer who, by the way, had accompanied Dr. King throughout all of his rallies throughout the U.S. and beyond. She's a great, great, great singer. She knew that Dr. King had prepared remarks, but she interrupted him, which was kind of interesting. And she said to him, Martin, tell them about your dream. Dr. King responded with the words of one of the most famous speeches in American history, and it was, I have a dream. Now you need to read it for yourselves. I'm just going to give you just a little bit of a snippet, but go back and read it carefully, read it thoroughly. But this is what Dr. King said. I say to you today, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, what? I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of the creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. So as we prepare to begin the spring semester 2017 at University of Connecticut, our beloved UConn, I challenge you to have a dream. We can't stop dreaming and believing that our collective lights will shine and will illuminate this campus, our community, our state, and our world. Please have a dream. Thank you. Alrighty, it's gratitude time. There are so many people who work on the Martin Luther King Day Committee practically year-round. We start we'll probably start in just a few weeks, planning for next year. And when we get back for fall semester, we're meeting weekly. This wonderful, wonderful group of people meet weekly in the African American Cultural Center to plan every single aspect of this event. And so I warned them, but they may not believe me, that I want them to come up to the stage. So when I call your name, don't even be trying not to come. Velda Alfred Abney. Velda, it's so good to have your name on the list first. Come on up, Velda, don't play. Because Velda was she's one of the last two. Velda and Elsie Gonzalez, they were on the committee. Oh my God, we have the baby too. Elsie was on the original committee. Velda, doesn't it seem like so long ago when we did that? Nana Amos was also on the committee. Come on, Nana. Gabrielle Bechu and her mother, Ida Silva. Yamisha Bell. Nisha. Where's Tim? Tim Bussey. Mr. Cartagena. Oh, our esteemed senior design manager. Mr. Cartagena. He's so popular, isn't he? Cynthia Melendez, come on up, Cynthia, Community Outreach. Miss Sarah Cook, Community Outreach. Dr. Cooper, oh my God, Dr. Cooper is so amazing on so many levels. He comes to my class, I can't believe this. He has his own classes. Why does he come to my class every week? Every single week he comes to my class, sits in, helps out with students, and just is an amazing, amazing, amazing person. So thank you, Dr. Cooper. Holden Powell, another one of my wonderful students. Bryce Hall, come on, darling. Nur Ilafi, where are you, Nur? That's good. You guys are so nice today. Sometimes I see people who want to sit out and not come and listen, but I will call you out. Terrence Abney. Where are you, Mr. Terrence? Ricardo Destembin. Come on up, Ricardo. Isn't this a great committee? Look at them. Monique Golden. Elsie is already here from the original group. Ruth Haddis. Miss Ruth. Lauren Hennis. Charles is sick today. Charles Holmes Hope. Dr. Pat Gibson. Oh my gosh. She's another one. Pat and Joseph come to my class. Are they great? Where is she? Pat. I was going to say, don't try to play me here. Okay. Nathan Johnson. Where's Nathan? Tiffany Julian. Kat. I haven't seen Kat today. Kat Maldonado. Michael Mallory Jr. Sue Margaret Meg Muller, who is, oh my gosh, I don't know if you passed the Rock today. You know, the Rock down by, you know where it is. Okay. I turned the corner today, and I know she promised that she was going to do it, and she did it last year. I turned the corner, and I was like, oh my God, Be the Light, the Rock. Don't anybody touch it. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful rock. Oh, here she is. Oh, hi. How are you, darling cat? Nemo, where are you, Nemo? Okay, Nemo next. The other Sister Price, Christian Price, Tia Roy, Mary had to be away. Mary Shaw, who is amazing. She had to be away for a funeral today. Abigail Smith. Morgan Sutton, Neil, where's Neil? Oh, Neil, right here. There's a snake you could have bitten in there, okay. And Neil Thurston, did I see Morgan Sutton? And where is Lynn? She likes to hide. Lynn, See, this is what happens when you put your name last, because now you have to come all the way across the front. Sister Price, welcome back. Good to see you. Where's like, hi, darling. How are you? Let's give them a wonderful glory so they can see you. Mr. Crawford, our resident photographer, I don't know if you, Mr. Crawford, I haven't seen you, but if you are here, take that picture. Y'all smile, look cute, okay. If he's not, somebody else will take it. Come on, son. Come on, son. You got us? Yes. Ooh. I called Russell, didn't I? Did I leave Russell out? Russell! Is there anybody else I left out? Where's, oh, Russell? Russell, where are you, baby? Get up, come on. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, Russell, oh my gosh, Russell is our main community volunteer person. Come on. When you thought we had everything, Russell, oh my gosh. Who? Daphne, where are you? Who? You see them telling me people are here? What, Elsie? Oh, Susie, and she's right here. Susie, where are you? No, never mind. Susie, come on up. Susie is Miss Amazing with essays and art. And Susie, you really are right here on the list. I think I paused to say something. And there she is, darling. I paused to say something and missed you. Now that we get everybody committed, aren't they so generous? Making sure that nobody's left out. Okay, take a good picture for Michael. Riley, what are you talking about? Thank you. Thanks for giving me those points. Exactly. Okay. There are a few more people we need to thank, and for sure, one you will be hearing from in just a few minutes, and that is our wonderful president of the University of Connecticut, Dr. Susan Herbst. I still remember that I was reminding her tonight when she came in. Of course, I didn't need to remind her, she already knew, that when just not that many years ago, we had our first program in the Student Union Theater. Our very first one, just wondering and thinking how it was going to turn out. I remember Cato Lorenzen, I think, was our keynote speaker, and President Herbst was there as a new president of the University of Connecticut. And we can count on her. She never, ever misses. And we just are always so thrilled to see you. You're going to be hearing from her, but I just want to give you, President Herbst, special thanks. Also, our Provost Moon Choi, who's leaving us, but he's been a marvelous supporter of this program through the years. And of course, Joelle Murchison, Miss Joelle, as I like to call her affectionately, Associate Vice President for the Office for Diversity and Inclusion. And she is the Chief Diversity Officer of the University of Connecticut. Michael Gilbert, Michael, you probably are here, Vice President for Student Affairs. Dr. Christine Wilson, Dr. Michael Gilbert, Dr. Christine Wilson, Assistant Vice President, Student Activities. Reverend Clayton, who is Director of the UConn Voices of Freedom. And everybody has their own little cheering squad. And she's also a music teacher at Harvard Public High School. And we will be seeing that choir with us for Black History Month, right, Lisa? Mm-hmm. Okay. Our keynote speaker, we're still trying to find out what's going on with that, but Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, Wayne Locust, where are you, Wayne? Vice President, Enrollment Management and Planning. Where's Wayne? He's got to be here. He's always here. Mona Lucas, who is Assistant Vice President, Financial Aid, our good friends. Nathan First, University Director of Admissions. So let's give them all a hand. It is my pleasure to welcome President Susan Herbst.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. Before we start, I know she was thanked once already, but wanted to thank Joelle Murchison She's our first ever Chief Diversity Officer in the university's 136-year history. That was too long. She's already done a tremendous job here. Every day she makes sure that we maintain our commitment to diversity, make this a welcoming environment for faculty, students, staff. She's just a tremendous asset here at UConn. Thank you so much, Dr. Price and the H. Fred Simmons African American Cultural Center for putting this together, this program. It looks tremendous. Mark Lamont Hill is a scholar and a writer. I just saw him on television this morning. He's awesome, so worth waiting for, and I'm sure he'll be here soon.
I'm here.
You were so great on CNN this morning. I don't know how you did that, but it was terrific. Each year at this time, African Americans remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his legacy, but all too often the totality and complexity of his vision are ignored in the otherwise laudable impulse to celebrate a truly great American. Many don't know that in the last months of his life, the work that consumed Dr. King was the Poor People's Campaign, an effort to secure jobs, unemployment insurance, a fair wage, and education for millions of Americans living in poverty. Surveying the total wealth of American society in his day, yet seeing all the inequality that undermined it, Dr. King wrote at the end of 1967, "The curse of poverty has no justification in our age. It is socially as cruel and blind as the practice of cannibalism at the dawn of civilization." King envisioned this campaign would include the formation of a nationwide network of citizens groups to lobby lawmakers on poverty issues at every level of government. He saw this not only as a continuation of the civil rights movement's work, but a fulfillment of the promises of American democracy itself for all of its citizens. The highest patriotism, he wrote, consisted in the pledge to achieve final victory over racism and poverty. It was as part of the Poor People's Campaign that he traveled to Memphis in the spring of 1968 to join striking sanitation workers in their efforts to secure improved pay and working conditions. It was there in Memphis, at the beginning of his anti-poverty campaign, that he was slain by an assassin's bullet. The United States today is vastly better for the life and work of Martin Luther King, but his work is not finished. Poverty and racism are still blights on our society today, a time when the courage and clarity of his vision are needed more than ever. As a university committed to education as an essential part of the public good, it is incumbent on all of us to use this day not only to celebrate the great work that Martin Luther King did, but to pledge ourselves to continuing that work in all of its rich complexity. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you enjoy this program. It's going to be terrific.
Now, wasn't that marvelous news to hear that Mark is here? All righty, this is good. We're moving right along. It's my pleasure to introduce to you, many of you know him already, Mr. Steve Cartagena, who's been... He is our amazing designer for the marvelous t-shirt this year, the one last year. People are still asking for it. Everything he touches just practically turns to gold. He is so generous, and you name it, and he's going to graduate and leave me, but I guess that's part of the plan. But anyway, love you, darling. Please give us some words, okay?
Love you too, Dr. Price. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve Cartagena, and I'm joined here by Neil Thurston. We were part of the social media committee. There we go, clap it up, clap it up. So we were part of the social media committee that brought forth the designs for this event, and just wanted to speak on behalf of the design and kind of the choices we made. In light of the time that we're in now, as a country, we felt that it was important to remind ourselves that progress is not linear, and we now more than ever have a reason to organize and challenge what we see as detrimental to our future success.
So with that said, be the change you envision at UConn and around the nation. We want to encourage you to get involved in local organizations, whether that's a Black Lives Matter chapter or an organization where you can actually make the difference and be a change advocate. As President Obama said in his farewell address to the nation, he said that the most powerful position in the union is that of a citizen. So we just wanted to encourage you all to use that position and your locus of control to make a difference and be the light. Thank you.
Lisa Clayton, darling, you are just the most wonderful and generous person. We know how many irons you have in the fire, and I know how long you've been with the University of Connecticut, even as a graduate student. It seems like so many years ago. But we're absolutely thrilled to welcome you and the University of Connecticut Voices of Freedom Gospel Choir to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Price. We're really honored to be here to celebrate today. And we're going to sing, we're going to enlist your help. First, we're going to sing How Great Is Our God. And if you know that, please join us. And then we're going to add at the end this little light of mine. And we need all of you to help us sing that one, okay? All right.
Now, what's up with UConn getting its praise on? I just love it. Reverend Clayton, you are absolutely amazing. And you know what, just another word about the Voices of Freedom, because we're not even back in session. They have not been meeting, rehearsing, or whatever they rehearse, but you know what I mean, in their formal time. And they took the time, all these young people got themselves together with Reverend Clayton to get ready for today. So let's give them another round of applause. UConn, Voices of Freedom Gospel Choir, historic gospel choir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Alrighty, now, I'm introducing to you this wonderful, wonderful young lady, Maman Cooper. Maman, are you? All of these people have like fan clubs. But Maman, I've known her for so long, not just simply as a student here at University of Connecticut, but I met her when she was a senior at Berkeley High School. And when I met her, she was all starry-eyed about wanting to get into University of Connecticut. She talked about how much she loved the university, and she couldn't wait. She just applied, could not wait to be here. And let me tell you how happy I was when she came in the fall, and I was like, oh my gosh, Maman is here. And she's getting ready well, she's a senior, so she's gonna leave me in a little bit, but I'm telling you, I'm just so happy to have her. Amazing on so many levels, but you know what, that's what I say. Let's see what you say, okay? Come on.
Wow, hi. Good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Maman. Thank you for having me here. I am so happy to see everyone back to school. This was the first winter break I actually did not stay on campus, so being back feels really good. I want to give it a shout out to some people in the crowd, including my Birmingham 2017 folks. So this past week, 51 other students and I from UConn, we went to Birmingham, Alabama, and we spent the entire week doing community service. And I must tell you, I can stand up here and talk for hours of what an amazing and eye-opening experience it was, but Dr. Price will surely drag me off stage, so I'll just go straight to my point. This speech was definitely the most hardest speech I ever had to write, and thanks to the help of my Birmingham folks who encouraged me and said, Maman, no matter what, you're going to be amazing. Shout out to Jeff, Kareem, Aaliyah, Monique from the graduate school, Holden, Adelie, my close friend Jared, who was up with me throughout 3 a.m. this morning writing the speech. I promise I did not procrastinate, it was just really hard. And also shout out to my little 11-year-old niece Linda, who is sitting right there. She came to spend time with me last night, but I spent the entire time writing the speech, so I'm not spending time with her, so please forgive me. So going to my point, my name is Maman Cooper. I was born and raised in Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast in West Africa, due to the fact that my father escaped the civil war in Liberia and migrated to the Ivorian country. I grew up speaking French and 2 other native languages. Like many children in the developing world, I did not go to school. My parents sent me to live with my aunt across the cities under the impression that she would put me to school and give me an education. However, she did not live up to her promise. While living with my aunt, I was forced to stay home to do chores and to go to the farm every single day. Sometimes I stayed home and I watched the kids in the yard go to school with their backpacks bounce up and down, bounce up and down, and I wish that I went to school too. As you can imagine, a few years later, I find myself in the United States, the milk of honey. And my wish to finally go to school someday came true when I came to the United States in 2004. Since arriving to the United States, I have learned so much. I have witnessed personal growth, and I have developed into a young lady who acknowledged her history, know her privilege, and realize my obligation to give back to my community. So when people ask me, what do you want to do with your life? Which is a famous senior question. What do you want to do for a career? I know for sure that I don't know the answer to that question yet. But one thing that I've always known is that I want to give back to my country, Liberia. I want to build a country so that the students who are not able to go to school will have an education just like I have. Due to 2 civil wars and the Ebola crisis in 2014, many kids are left orphanage, no parents, no home, and just left on the street in orphanage home. So my country has 63% of illiteracy rate for men and 33% of illiteracy rate for women. I want to give back to the children of Liberia so they can get an equal education. I have known that my calling is in the education system of Liberia. Sometimes I think to myself that maybe I was denied an education so that when I finally make it to this far, I can look back and notice the condition my brothers and sisters are in, so that I can reach for them to put them up the ladder, because not everyone have the boost to put themselves at their bootstraps. But the condition of my country continues to overwhelm me with fears and doubts of, with 2 civil wars, a broken economy, a broken education system, what can one girl do for an entire country? How can I shine my light? Today we sit in this auditorium in the remembrance of the great Dr. Martin Luther King, the man who found his calling in bridging the poor and the rich, the white and blacks. Dr. King boldly stood up and vocalized his dream, surrounded by people who share similar vision with him and who paved the same path with him, such as Pastor Fred Shuttlesworth. Dr. King told the nation and the world with the courage that he had a dream, that someday a black child like myself will be able to play with a white child. Dr. King embodied courage, boldness, and the ability to stare fear dead in the face without budging. Today, many of us live the legacy of that dream, and we walk a clearer path because he shone his light on us. We look at things going on around us and we wonder, and we get overwhelmed and wonder with doubt. What can a common person like me do to make a difference? What can I change? But if you take a look through your story, if you take a look through your experience, you can look around you and find something that you can impact, no matter how little. We all sit here together in this room today because of people like Dr. King, Pastor Fred Shuttlesworth, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, Claudette Caldwell, Malcolm X, and countless others who shine their lives for generations like myself to have a brighter day. Our knowledge, our education, our network, and our resources, our attitudes can all be used to get rid of the darkness of ignorance, hate, bigotry, sexism, and more. Today you're sitting in your seat and you are wondering, okay, so she's talking about the light. What is my light? What can I do? I dare you, as you sit in your seat before you leave this auditorium, to answer that question for yourself. What is your light? I know what my light is. My light will be used to build the education system of Liberia by first building a team, as well as mentoring the Liberian youth in my community in Connecticut. I know what my light is, and I am going to let it shine for others to see through crooked roads. So what are you going to do with your light? Are you going to keep it off so that others stumble in the dark? Or are you going to let your light shine? Thank you.
She's so amazing. All right, Russell, where are you? Russell, Taj, Terrence, and Charles is sick. You need to bring up all of your volunteers. We need to see who they are, bring them to the stage. They're just every place, wearing t-shirts, putting up displays, everything. Come on, let's move. Hurry, please. Russell, line them up. Thank you, darling. Bring them all up. Let's give them a hand. Where's Brother Terrence? Yeah. Brother Charles. Taj, where are you, darling? Come on, baby. Oh my gosh, this is so great. You guys look marvelous. Mr. Jeremiah, will you please take a picture wherever you are? Great, line up together. Okay. Oh my. Oh, look at you. You're wearing them shirts. I gotta get my shirt on. Okay. Spread, come on down, Taj. Come down a little bit so we can get everybody, because it's a big crowd. Okay. Let's get, when we get them all up there, then we're gonna give them like this wonderful round of applause and say thank you, thank you, thank you. Move down, come on baby, come on baby. Okay, move in, okay. Thank you, let's give them a bigger round of applause, come on. Outstanding. Y'all look happy, please. They're looking like Dr. Price. I don't know where we were. Thank you, thank you. Oh, that's Jeremiah. You are just so wonderful. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, loves. You know, this day would not nearly work as well if we didn't have the cooperation of our community outreach department here at University of Connecticut. And we are absolutely thrilled today to have Jessie Dew to come and talk to us about our day of service. Unlike many other places, too many other places, they consider this day as a day off, a holiday. Not at UConn. It's a day on, it's a day to give, a day to make a difference. So Jessie, I assume you're moving to the stage. And I do that, Jessie, only because the lights get in my face so I can't see y'all. So when you just come on, darling. Where are you? Oh, there she is. Hey, Jessie, hi. How are you? Good to see you.
Hello everyone, my name is Jessie Dew, and I, along with Brittany Chu, are the program directors for campus-wide initiatives in the Office of Community Outreach. And Community Outreach is committed to developing active global citizens through leadership opportunities, service activities, democracy, and political engagement events. The office strives to engage students in meaningful service activities that enrich student learning and enhance the quality of life for others in our local, national, and international communities. Programs range from one-time service opportunities to weekly service programs, with all programs being student-led. And there are many opportunities to get involved, and we encourage you to come visit our office to get inspired. We're on the third floor of the Student Union. Our role as program directors has given us the opportunity to organize events such as MLK Day of Service. And I'd like to thank Cynthia Melendez and Sarah Cook from Community Outreach, because without them this would have been a very stressful experience. But it's been a great and amazing experience to see all our hard work and planning from last semester result in such a well-attended and engaged day of service at UConn. And it is specifically important to participate in service activities on this holiday. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service is the only federal holiday observed as a national day of service. And as Dr. Price was saying before, we do want to have this as a day on versus a day off. And this day is part of the United We Serve, which is the President's National Call to Service initiative. And so it calls for Americans from all walks of life to work together to provide solutions in our most pressing national problems. Dr. King believed in a nation of freedom and justice for all, and encouraged all citizens to live up to the purpose and potential of America by applying the principles of nonviolence to make this country a better place to live, creating the beloved community. The MLK Day of Service is a way to transform his life teachings into community action that helps solve social problems. So today, UConn had over 200 volunteers participate in the day of service through on and off campus activities, which is an increase from last year. And off-campus, off-campus volunteers started early this morning, which is not an easy feat for our college students coming back from winter break, and they went to various surrounding communities. Participants spent their days serving in a soup kitchen to providing educational programs to children at a local community center. We also had several on-campus service events, including one in the morning where we had volunteers create United Way literacy kits, which were used to help to engage children in learning and deepen children's reading experience. One of our other events that we had today was Piecing Together Solutions. So volunteers came together and crocheted a blanket and learned about poverty and homelessness. And this blanket will be donated to a local homeless shelter. And our final and most recent event that we had on campus was the No-Sew blankets. Volunteers created dozens of warm fleece blankets that would be donated to various surrounding shelters, which is especially crucial in this New England winter. Students and staff joined us from Eastern Connecticut State University, UConn Hartford's campus, and several local organizations and businesses. We also like to thank Tyco Simplex Grinnell for coming out today. Many of their staff came to UConn to volunteer in our service events. And seeing so many individuals today be so involved and excited for service has been incredibly rewarding, and incorporating service into our daily lives helps carry Dr. King's teachings extend past this day. We have the power through community action to make social change. Thank you to all the volunteers today and to all for making today a day on, not a day off. And let's give a big round of applause for all those who did so today.
Thank you so much, Community Outreach. Sarah, Cynthia, who's been with us throughout the entire year on the committee, you are absolutely amazing. And thank you for your commitment to this day and to University of Connecticut, and certainly to a day of service in the Dr. Martin Luther King's honor. I don't know how many of you knew that we have praises of dancers here at University of Connecticut, UConn Praise Dancers. And I know. So when Jasmine Johnson-Giles came in as a freshman this year, she came to my office and she said, Dr. Price, I'm planning to organize a group called Praise Dancers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be so great. Good luck, let us know if we can do anything to help you. And sure enough, in about 3 weeks, she was ready with her group to perform at our Welcome Back Dinner from African American Cultural Center. They just bowled us all over, and they continue to do that. So it is my pleasure to welcome to the stage Jasmine Johnson-Giles and the University of Connecticut Praise Dancers.
I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me. All along life's pilgrim journey. To walk with me. Jesus, Lord, walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with Jesus, walk with me.
Let's give them another big round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm pleased to introduce to some of you, many of you already know Joelle Murchison. She's been just on the ground running since she arrived here 6 months ago. She is our Chief Diversity Officer for University of Connecticut. We're absolutely honored and proud to have her. All of the cultural centers report to Joelle, and we have been just absolutely dazzled and challenged beyond measure to work with her extraordinary vision and leadership for University of Connecticut. And she even brought her babies here, they're here. So we're absolutely proud to have her family and also Dr. Joelle Murchison. She is going to introduce our keynote speaker. So let's get ready, folks. Miss Joelle, and again, I call her that because I love her so much and I feel that kind of kinship. And I'm also very Southern, as you know. Oh, she's here.
I think we took Be the Light very seriously with this spotlight here because you literally cannot see anything. Dr. Price is not exaggerating. So thank you so much for the opportunity today. It is my pleasure to be here with you. It is really an honor and a privilege to serve as the university's Chief Diversity Officer. This is probably the second time that I've stood before a large group of students in the community. The first time many of you may have saw me initially was the day after the election at the rally in front of Wilbercross. And it was a moment, I think, for all of us as we think about what will become of us as a people and as a nation. It was a call to action for us to come together as community. And I think it's very important as we reflect on the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King to remember his call to a beloved community. It is one that guides my vision for us all here at UConn. It is a community that is filled with and girded by understanding, seeking understanding. It is surrounded with compassion. Once we seek to understand, there becomes an opportunity to find compassion for those who are like us and those who aren't. And then finally, it brings us to a place where we can not only acknowledge the representation of all individuals from all walks of life, but that we can begin to fully include and engage them in the life of this, our own version of the beloved community. A community that sees and recognizes that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so I hope that I can count on each and every one of you to join with me, the leadership of our Office for Diversity and Inclusion, all of whom are here, as well as the Cultural Center directors who are part of that team, as we begin to build our own community here at UConn. It is a place where even ordinary people, just like you and me, have the opportunity to shine a light, to find a way to bring compassion and understanding and a true sense of inclusion to this community. So I wanted to just share that with you as we move forward in this program, and just as a precursor to introducing Dr. Hill, whose academic work, and certainly his work as an important political commentator of our time, has really sought to bring truth to power and to speak from the voice of those who oftentimes are not heard. I tend not to like to introduce people who I've not had an opportunity to speak with, but because of the timing of the program, I didn't have an opportunity to speak directly with him. But Dr. Hill and I have a mutual friend, Dr. Ed Brockenbrown. Yes. And so I did reach out to Dr. Brockenbrow to learn some wonderful things about Dr. Hill. And I'm sure that all of you have the opportunity to read his full bio. You can Google it. He has an extremely extensive bio, and I would encourage you to take a look at a number of the publications that he has available. But I think what's most important is that he has continued to live a life of service. Is that my... Oh, I thought so. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do this without her up here, but everybody now, you've met Raven. You can hear her. Hi, Raven. Okay, now I'm going to introduce Dr. Hill, okay? All right. I think if I brought her, she would have wanted to talk more than I, and it's important that we make sure we get through today's program. So, just a few things. As I was saying, I think most important is his authenticity and legitimacy in bringing life through his academic work to his real life experiences. He continues to be a social justice advocate in spite of the fact that many of you know him from his many television appearances. He's one of the leading intellectual voices in this country, and yet he is a down-to-earth, real brother. That's from Dr. Ed, who's my classmate in undergrad. He's currently the Distinguished Professor of African American Studies at Morehouse College. Prior to that, he held positions at Columbia and Temple. As I mentioned, he is the author or co-author of a number of books, most recently two, America's Nobody, Casualties of America's War on the Vulnerable from Ferguson to Flint and Beyond, and Gentrifier, which is coming out this month. He's also published 2 edited books, Media Learning and Sites of Possibility and Schooling Hip Hop, New Directions in Hip Hop-Based Education. He holds a PhD with distinction from the University of Pennsylvania, and as I mentioned, his research work has really helped to inform our knowledge and capability in the intersection between culture, politics, and education. And so without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you an amazing professor, from what I understand, a good friend, and an accomplished scholar, Dr. Mark Lamont Hill.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for that generous introduction. I'm honored and moved to be invited to UConn to celebrate this day with you. Can we give a round of applause also to Dr. Price? Dr. Price is the heart and soul of this institution. She is the spirit of this place, and whenever I come back, I'm always reminded of just how integral she is to this place, not just as a leader, as an intellect, but also as a guiding spirit to make this place, which can just be a bunch of buildings and bureaucracies and institutions, actually feel like a home to so many of us. Also, thank you to all of the people who performed. When I heard this little light of mine, it warmed my heart. When I saw those praise dancers, I hadn't quite seen a performance like that before, and I was excited to be a part of it. Today is special. Today is special because we are honoring the life and the legacy of Martin King. So many people give lip service to the idea of celebrating King. So many people give lip service to the most superficial dimensions of his legacy and life, but few people take the time to take Dr. King seriously. And part of what it means to take Dr. King seriously is to commit institutionally to his life, to his ideas, to this notion of service that just preceded me. So the fact that the school itself is willing to have a site this big and to have so many of you come out, not just to hear me run my mouth, but to engage in forms of service all day, all week, to talk about tough issues, y'all are operating in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. I'm grateful to you all for that. So, what does it mean to operate in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr.? That, for me, is what we need to talk about today. What does it mean to operate in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. in 2017? 4 days before inauguration. Damn, no. I said execution. Y'all like, oh. What does it mean to think about Martin King as you sit at the University of Connecticut? What does it mean to think about Martin Luther King Jr. against the backdrop of a world that is more and more complicated, more and more dangerous for some, less and less free for others? How can we wrestle with this legacy in a way that does Dr. King well? See, too often we think about Dr. King's legacy as one of completion, one of celebration. We came, we marched, we won. And if you think about Martin King through the lens of completion, then you believe that our democracy is finished. You believe that the work that has been done is as good as it could possibly be. You believe that all of the struggles, all of the sacrifices, all of the bloodshed, all of the tears, that have all been worthwhile, but they've all been cashed in as fully as humanly possible. And I'm saying, no, that's not the legacy of King. It's tough to think about the legacy of King during the presidency of Obama. Because the legacy of Obama can seduce us into believing that our democracy is finished. That this American democratic experiment has done all the work that it can do. On November 4th, 2008, when Barack Obama becomes president, many of us felt as if we were literally completing the legacy of King. That America had overcome. And in some ways we had. When Barack Obama becomes president, he's doing so just a few hundred years past Jamestown. 1619 black folk came here as property. And for the next several hundred years, African people in this strange place called America picked cotton. We created the industry, and we were the energizing force that created American capitalism, that created the American empire. Black folk created America through unpaid labor. This is part of the truth of America. And that unpaid labor turned into a particular type of experiment in democracy, one that we were on the outside of. So, to see Barack Obama president feels like an extraordinary thing. We just a few hundred years past, actually we just 145 years past the Emancipation Proclamation when Barack Obama becomes president. Right. We just, a few decades beyond barking dogs and water hoses, segregated lunch counters, fighting to integrate old myths, struggling to operate in the South without your money being counterfeit. You can't buy a hamburger with the money you worked for. You can't sit at a Woolworth lunch counter. You can't go to Horn and Harder. You can't buy a Coca-Cola. You can't have my dad born 1928, his high school class went to the Washington Monument and couldn't have its picture taken in front of it. The dogs could. We're in 1965 when the Voting Rights Act happens, 43 years after black folk fully and finally have access to American citizenship in any real fashion, when we finally get the franchise, when we can finally vote. Those same hands that picked cotton started picking presidents, and 45 years later, one of our own children becomes the leader of the most powerful empire in human history. And it does make you feel good. It does make you feel inspired. It does make you believe that we live in a nation that doesn't just grow old, but also grows up. And that can seduce you into believing that King's legacy is complete, that we may have elected a person because of the content of their character rather than the color of their skin, and we can become seduced into that Disney-fied narrative of multiculturalism that governs and overdetermines the way in which we understand American democracy. But King's legacy cries from the grave and says, we got to do more. King's legacy would not be satisfied with November 4th, 2008 or November 6th, 2012. King's legacy would be intrigued by a Negro in the White House. But I believe King's legacy would be much more concerned with those who are living outdoors. Much more concerned with those who are homeless. King's legacy would remind us that there have always been black elites. There have always been black politicians. There have always been black moneymakers. And the fact that we have a few more now, that we got a Tyler Perry making movies. See, that's what y'all should have grown for. And we got Oprah with her own network, or Ken Chenault running American Express, or we have an expansion of black PhDs and MBAs. That all of this stuff is good, but that our nation and our democratic experiment is only as good as the least of these. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, no man or woman can rise above the condition of their people. What does it mean for us to struggle in 2017 with mass unemployment, with mass incarceration, with broken education, with food insecurity, with universities that are becoming less like bastions of democracy and more like multinational corporations, with technocratic rationalities, presidents that are more like CEOs, tenure being exploited and eliminated, casualizing labor, graduate students being exploited, being made to teach more and more for less and less, adjuncts being used instead of full-time faculty, unions being broken, everyday workers in the university being paid less than a living wage, rape culture on the campus, less security for gay and lesbian folk, transgender folk. What kind of nation, what kind of university do we have? Do we have a beloved community for the least of these? That's what King would say. And our job is to wrestle with those contradictions of black presidents and black misery, of freedom and unfreedom, safety and unsafety. And then right when we think we may have even turned a tiny corner, we get November 8th, 2016. I mean, it's a fascinating moment to think about. There's this way in which all these weird things have become normalized. Misogyny, patriarchy. Not to say that they didn't exist before, but to hear them normalized in such a kind of prominent way on TV and in the news. White mediocrity. I already got my check, so. I'm just saying, right? I mean, there's something fascinating about watching a Donald Trump. I mean, nobody destroys the notion of white supremacy more than Donald Trump. You watch Donald Trump, you're like, oh, white people ain't better than nothing. Like, we good. There's a kind of way in which, juxtaposed to the Obama legacy, and I'm not an Obama guy, I'm just talking about in terms of representation. How this moment reminds us of what is unfinished. With the social contract, with the racial contract, with our representations. We have so much work to do. Dr. King would be challenging us to do that work. How, though? I think for me, the question is, how does Dr. King lead us into a more robust and more mature, a more sophisticated freedom dream? I think the first thing that King forces us to do is to release our imaginations. He challenges us to release our imaginations. When King is giving the I Have a Dream speech, and it's important to understand the context of the I Have a Dream speech, because he didn't give it the first time on August 28, 1963. He gave it another time before, and he has said those words before in a church, and he was wrestling with this idea of what his dream would be. But the fact that King framed his social vision in the context of a dream was his way of challenging us to not let the limits of the immediate, to not let the constraints of the moment define our reality. The great Howard Thurman, the theologian and mystic, said, "Never ever scale down your dreams to the level of that which is your immediate experience." What does it mean to not scale down your dream to the level of that which is your immediate experience? It means you don't become prisoner to the event. You don't become prisoner to the circumstance. Robin Kelly talks about the idea of the freedom dream. We must have a radical imagination that is grander than the moment. That means that as we enter this room, as we engage King, as we engage our political work, as we engage our pedagogical work, as we engage our intellectual work, we must at all moments think about freedom as unfinished and think about our freedom dreams as audacious. That means that we shouldn't be thinking about how to have warmer and fuzzier prisons. We should be thinking about how to create a world without prison. We have to create a world where the market doesn't define our reality. We can live in a world. Jean-Jacques said it's easier for people to imagine the end of the world itself than to imagine the end of capitalism. I'm challenging us to dream a more robust freedom dream. We don't have to be prisoner to the moment. We don't need to just put body cameras on cops. Let's think about how to demilitarize, disarm, and ultimately eliminate police from our communities. How can we reimagine the world in a grander freedom dream so that our politics as usual, to quote the great Sean Carter, is one where we say government F government. We politic ourselves. How can we reimagine the world with a new freedom dream? We must release our imagination. Let's stop talking about what we can't do. That doesn't mean we're not pragmatic. It doesn't mean that we ignore the material conditions around us, but what it means is that we don't have to be prisoner to them. And then, as we engage our freedom dreams, now that they're released and grand and unfettered and unencumbered and audacious, we then have to think about something bigger. And the only way to engage in something bigger is to follow the legacy of King. King's legacy was one of deep listening. January 15th, 1968. King wakes up. Throws on his jeans, puts on a windbreaker jacket, he comes down the stairs. He sits with his children. They have breakfast. He listens to them. King understood the value of listening to young folk. Part of what it means to engage in a beloved community in the tradition of King is to understand the inherent value of young people. Too often we dismiss young folk as incomplete adults, as unfinished humanity, as folk who ain't right yet. As we said in the South, they ain't caught sense yet. But King understood that young folk are the energy behind any freedom struggle. Y'all sometimes, particularly as college students, think a king is an older fella, kind of patriarch or father of civil rights. He dies at 39 years old. Malcolm dies at 39. Che dies at 39. I'm 38 and getting nervous. But think about not 39-year-old King, think about 19-year-old King. Think about the King that graduated Morehouse at 16 years old. Then goes to Crozier, then goes to Boston for his PhD. Think about that King. Not just his academic ambition or his intellectual capacity, but his youth. Think about Fred Hampton in Chicago. 19 years old when Chicago police killed him in his bed. Think about Huey and Bobby in Oakland. One a teenager, one in the early 20s, struggling for freedom. Think about young Claudette Colvin, who got shouted out earlier, the mother of civil rights. Before there was a Rosa Parks, there was a Claudette Colvin. If Rosa was the mother of civil rights, remember Claudette Colvin was not allowed to be the face of civil rights struggle because she was an unwed mother. She was a teenager and she didn't fit the respectability profile. If Rosa Parks is the mother of civil rights, Claudette is the baby mama of civil rights. And part of what we want to do is shatter that understanding of who and what people can be in order to struggle for freedom. That includes being young. Because young folk have always animated the struggle. They've always energized the struggle, but the challenge of doing that is to recognize the value in all young people, not just the ones we deem special. I'm on TV this morning debating this guy who gets pulled over and beaten by the police for standing up too straight and not hitting the ground fast enough when they hit him. And they say, well, he was a PhD student. Cool. But I don't care if he's not a PhD student. I shouldn't need a PhD to not get killed. I shouldn't need a JD or a BA or an MBA or an ABCDEFG. You shouldn't kill me because I'm a human being. But we have to be willing to see the humanity in these young folk. Because it's young folk that have been energizing us on the streets of Ferguson, and the streets of Baltimore, and the streets of New York, and the streets of Oakland. It's been young people that have kept us honest. It is young people that have challenged us. Freedom struggles are only as strong as the young people behind them, but sometimes many of us who are becoming elders or who are elders would rather have the organization die with our arms around it than to give it to a young person who can take it over, who can be mentored, who can be taught, who can be led, who can be trained. We have to see that in all young people. But that means when you walk into your classrooms, when you walk into your neighborhoods, when you walk into your own house, you got to see the genius of your own babies. You can't presume that the genius will just pop out. You think Martin Luther King Jr.'s teacher knew she had Martin Luther King Jr. in her kindergarten class? I mean, can you imagine that she just saw this genius who would be a Nobel Prize winner, Nobel Peace Prize winner, this person who'd be a world historical figure, what Sidney Hook would call an event-making man? Nah. She just saw another kid. Preacher's kid. Spoiled, middle class. You know how preacher's kids is. Talk kind of slow. I want to go to recess now. There was no reason to know that that would be Martin King. But the challenge of us is not to try and pick out or cherry pick the Martin King in each classroom. It's to look at all of our babies as if they have the ability to be Martin Luther King Jr., to look at all of our children as the next Ella Baker or Fannie Lou Hamer or Angela Davis or Asada Shakur or Claudette Colvin or Pamela Africa. That's our challenge, to see those acres of diamonds in our own backyard, as Russell Conwell said, and to begin digging. So King left the breakfast table and went to Dexter Avenue Church. They had a small cake for him. They sang happy birthday. And he began the work of deep listening. King understood that listening is not merely a physical act. It's not merely a physiological process. It's not merely something that you do to hear what people got to say in the most literal of senses. He understood listening as a moral and ethical project. To listen to folk is to hear their story. It's to hear their narrative. It's to hear their side. It's to understand and recognize their humanity. To listen to folk deeply is not the same thing as to talk and I talk and you talk and we take turns while you talk and I'm just thinking about what I'm going to say next. That's not a conversation. That is not deep listening. King understood that we were only as good as our commitment to hearing the voices and the stories of others. So in the current moment, King would be asking us to do what he did on that day. King, after he had the breakfast and the cake, he met with sanitation workers. One of them had been mauled in Chicago. And he was trying to figure out what they could do about living wages, what they could do about workers' rights, what they could do about safer working conditions. He listened to them. He met with Chicano activists, figuring out, he was fascinated about what was happening both south of the border and immediately on the other side of the border, and he was interested in thickening the narrative and the representation in the face of the civil rights struggle. He understood that civil rights wasn't just a black thing. He understood that America was expanded, America was grown, America was matured, America was enhanced when civil rights were expanded. He met with Negro preachers, God bless them, trying to figure out how they could build on the gains of 1964 and 1965. He listened to them. He listened to them. He met with anti-war activists, trying to figure out how they could stop this thing in Vietnam. King understood that we were better when we weren't really locked at the arms singing "We Shall Overcome," but also locked at the circumstance. He understood that America responded differently to our misery when we were linked together in a multiracial coalition, in a multidimensional coalition, when our interests and our actions and our commitments and our politics were intersected. We had a more mature and a more robust social movement. King understood the value of deep listening. King understood the difference between John F. Kennedy walking through Harlem in 1960, holding up a black baby. Kennedy walking through Harlem in 1960, they said, oh, he's trying to make Adam Clayton Powell happy. You know how those northern liberals are? They saw it as a cheap trick, a campaign stunt, kind of like Bill Clinton going on Arsenio Hall in '92, playing the saxophone. Or Hillary and Selma in '08, in church, trying to clap on beat. She almost had it. It was dismissed as a campaign stunt that stood in sharp contrast to Bobby Kennedy walking through West Virginia, walking through Appalachia in 1963 with that white baby whose belly was bloated and snot's coming out of his nose. He's crying and he's hungry, and we begin our war on poverty. He understood that we had to whiten the face of poverty to make it real. Now, King's moral universe was more mature than that. King understood that the baby himself, whether he was in Boston or Berlin or Botswana or Birmingham, was all worth the same. All lives were connected in this garment of mutuality that King was talking about. He understood that, but he also understood the practical matter. To understand King is not to see him as a Negro preacher, but to see him as one of the great political strategists of the 20th century. You must understand King's complexity, but sometimes it's hard to understand King's complexity because we reduce black folk to the most basic understanding of who and what they are. We believe that black folk preach and white folk organize, that black folk bring experience and white folk bring theory, but there's something much more complicated about black folks' experience in this nation. We've always had something to teach America about itself. And that's what King is doing when he follows the tradition of deep listening. Think about the Black National Anthem, which we ain't sing today. What's the Black National Anthem? Lift every every voice. You know, let's sing it. Stand up. Y'all stand up for all kinds of other stuff. Y'all know it, right? Take out your phones on y'all already snapping and Instagramming and Twitter. Google. Oh shit. I can't sing. All right, we're gonna do this, all right? I'm give him 1 second. 1 second, Ray. He look like a Ray, I don't know. Google Black National Anthem. Lift every voice and sing, all right? You ready? We're gonna do this. Oh, you're not Ray. It's one of the Raylets. Let's go, I love you. You ready? Wait, come on, y'all have to catch up. Y'all know the first verse. We can do all 3 verses, so y'all stop. Y'all ready? Lift every Y'all can do better than this. Sing a song. Face the rising sun. We tried. Last verse, nice and somber, God of our weary years. yourselves a round of applause. Don't that feel good? We about to enter Black History History Month. At least everybody should know this song, but black folk, you should really know this song. The American National Anthem was created at a moment where we were still property. You should know this one too. But why should we sing it at every event? And how is it instructive for us? Lift every voice. Black folk, this song is created and put to music 4 years after it is written. At a moment where black folk were engaged, where the black codes and the slave codes were still prominent. This was still written where black folk couldn't eat in public, where black folk couldn't marry who they want, where they couldn't love who they want, where they couldn't attend schools, where they couldn't be full humans in public, where their voices were muted from the public ear. And yet black folk, when they made a freedom song, didn't say lift some voices. Black folk didn't say lift our voices. Black folk said lift every voice. Black folk had a more mature understanding of democracy than white folk who enslaved them. Black folk understood that America was only as good as everybody could be, as all of us could be included in a democratic contract. That's what made black folk leave this thing. We got out of slavery and joined military. We joined police forces. We got out of the slave thing and helped create and fortify the American empire that enslaved us. Black folk believed in America more than America believed in America. They don't know who they had on them ships. So, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, y'all. Man, Lord. King understood that. King embraced that. King was part of a tradition of African people challenging America to listen to itself, to be its best self, to be its promised self, to be the self that was articulated on paper. That's why King is standing in front of Lincoln. King was saying, America, listen to yourself. He stood in front of the Lincoln statue, Lincoln Monument he's standing in front of on August 28, 1963. See, he was signifying. King wasn't just Baptist preacher, he was straight West Africa, Eshua Legba, signifying trickster figure. King is up there like, oh, you saying we free in 1863, Mr. Lincoln? Well, I'm going to stand in front of you in 1963 at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. You said we're emancipated in 1863. Well, I'm going to stand here in 1963 as Martin King and say, fourscore year ago, a great American whose symbolic shadow we stand signed an Emancipation Proclamation. He was showing America that its work was unfinished, that Lincoln, you promised. See, that's what African folk have always done. David Walker's appeal. A preamble together with 4 articles to the colored citizens of the world, but particularly and most expressly those of the United States. He's having a book with a preamble and 4 articles. He's saying, you got this Constitution thing, America, but the Negro ain't free. Listen to yourself. Alon Equiano, the narrative of the life of Alon Equiano and Gustavus Vassa, written by himself. He talks about the Christian traitor, similar to what David Walker does before the Nat Turner Rebellion. And he's saying, wait a minute, America. You talking about these Christian love and Christian ethics. You got this Christianity that didn't keep in track of your humanity, because the love ethic of Jesus, as Howard Thurman would say, isn't identified in the fact that Negroes are unfree, that women are unfree, that poor folk are unfree. America, your Christianity has lost track of your humanity. Listen to yourself. These Negro writers, Equiano, I wholly entreat your pardon for putting before your work so devoid of literary merit, written by an unlettered African. He wasn't unlettered. He wrote one of the great narratives of the century. Written by himself, written by herself. Phyllis Wheatley, written by herself. They telling you that not because they thought that Negroes couldn't read, but because they thought Negroes couldn't read. And they were saying, America, listen to yourself. Y'all don't think we can write this stuff. David Hume, Kant, Jefferson, Notes on Virginia? Yeah, y'all don't think Negroes have the capacity for intellection. Ain't that what Jefferson said in Notes on Virginia? Yeah, Thomas Jefferson had a complicated relationship to Negroes. He ain't love Negroes, but he... It's a fascinating thing, right? Negroes can't learn to read and write, but let's make laws to stop them from learning how to read and write. Negroes are lazy, let's make them slaves. Negroes are dirty, they'll clean their houses. Negroes are uncivilized, but they raised our children. Listen to yourself. So, King is saying, America, listen to yourself. You promised. We think of the I Have a Dream speech. You can't have King Day without playing I Have a Dream speech. We play like 4 lines of it. We want to hear about little black boys and black girls at the table of brotherhood. We want to hear about living in a world where people aren't judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That becomes our only vision of King's dream. King's dream was not just about some multicultural kitchen table. King's dream wasn't to look like a Pharrell video. King's vision was a robust social imagination where America kept track of its promises. The I Have a Dream speech wasn't about dreams. Dreams don't have budgets to them. King's dream was about the broken promise. King's speech was about the broken promise. He was saying, 80 years ago, a great American whose symbolic shadow we stand sign an Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree was what? A great beacon light. He was saying that the proclamation gave us hope. He said, but the Negro remains what? Unfree. He says, I come to the nation's capital to what? Cash a check. King wasn't here begging, hat in hand. King was demanding what was ours. King was saying, America, you promised. He said, the Negroes in a vast island of poverty amidst an ocean of material wealth and prosperity. King was saying, America, you promised. King said that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Emancipation Proclamation were promissory notes. He said they were like checks. But students, y'all understand this. He said the Negro's check has been returned what? Insufficient funds. He said, I refuse to believe the great vaults of democracy could be empty. King was saying, America, you promised. The legacy of King was not one of America begging America rather to be integrated and diverse and colorful. We didn't think our IQs would go up if white people were in our schools. We thought books would be there. We didn't just want white folk around for its own sake. We did not want white folk around, but that wasn't the point. The point of King's legacy was for us to be made whole. Because America, you promised. 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, King said, America, you promised. 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, America, you tried to promise. It's a broken promise, but you tried. 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, America, you promised. 1955, Brown v. Board 2. All deliberate speed, America, you promise. 1964, public accommodations, America, you promise. 1965, Voting Rights Act, America, you promise. The legacy of King is to get America to keep track of its promises so that we can finally live in a nation that is as good as its promise. But King understood that listening project required us to connect across coalition. But let me say 2 more things and I'm gonna leave y'all alone. He said, King also challenged us to ask different questions. King challenged us to ask different questions. King wasn't satisfied saying, we want to integrate lunch counters. King wasn't satisfied begging for jobs. King wasn't satisfied trying to integrate a few white universities. King had a grander vision because he asked different questions. And King asked different questions because King engaged ideas. King read deeply. College students, if we're gonna be freedom fighters, grown folk, if we're gonna be freedom fighters, we have to engage ideas. Go to Stanford, read the King papers. King was reading deeply in the 50s and 60s and in the 40s. King read different traditions and different ideas and different philosophies. This idea now that I only read stuff that I agree with, I only follow people on Twitter that think what I think, I only watch the cable news network where the host is gonna say something that I already said to my people at work earlier today, the water cooler. We got to engage broader ideas. Jesse Jackson used to tell me, he said, first day everybody could preach with Dr. King. We go to revival, first night everybody preach with King. You know, Negro preachers bring their best stuff the first night. He said about second, third night, King's PhD would kick in. He said King he knew the Greek mythology, he understood philosophy, he understood rich theological concepts, he was reading social theory. King read widely and deeply. I love social media, family, but we can't reduce our information intake to 140 characters. We got to engage more deeply. King did that, but King asked different questions. King didn't just ask why the Negro was being beaten. King was asking what's the relationship between the Negro being beaten and struggling for freedom and someone struggling for freedom in Accra, Ghana? What is the relationship between poverty in the United States, in the South, and expanding industrialism in the North? King was asking rich and complex questions about the relationship between things. What's the relationship between militarism and poverty and racism? How do we intersect these things? Let's ask different questions. The current moment likes to reduce things to simple answers when the questions are complex. And when you watch cable news, I'm on CNN, you know, Don Lemon will say to me, and I love Don, that's the homie, he'd be like, Mark, I want you to explain, you got a long segment, it's 4 minutes. I want you to explain why people are poor. And then we have to reduce our understanding of poverty to 4 minutes. Fox will give you less than that. Don't take long, right, black people? So we have to have a more complicated conversation. We have to ask more rich and complex questions about the world. That's what King would do. King wouldn't just say, why are people poor, and reduce it to poor people's choices. King would say, what are the forces and conditions that allow poverty to exist? What are the conditions that make people poor even when they work hard? Because the problem is we tend to reduce everything to the most simple and extreme case, right? We all know somebody trifling. You all got that sister that live in the house and won't move out. Right. We all got that person during the housing crisis. People said, oh my God, Negroes are buying more house than they can afford. These Latinos are getting more house than they can afford. They don't have jobs and they're getting no doc mortgages. Yes, there are like 10 people that made $20,000 a year working at Zaxby's and decided that they was gonna buy a $500,000 house. Yes, there are people like that. We all know somebody trifling. You all know somebody that has $20,000 rims, don't even got a car, right? Like, we all know people like this, but that's a simple answer to a complicated question about multinational corporations being deregulated, about access to capital being increased for those who are already wealthy and decreased for those who are not. It's about predatory lending. It's about corporations betting against their own, and it's about government bailouts of the most powerful at the expense of the most vulnerable. There is a conversation to be had, and that's the conversation King would have. King wouldn't just say that people are locked up because they're trifling or because they're lazy or because we raised a generation of criminals. There were 280,000 people incarcerated when King dies. There are now 2.5 million people in cages around America. We did not raise a generation of criminals. We did not raise a generation of people who are ethically corrupt or engaged in acts of moral turpitude. We didn't raise a generation of slow runners. Folk don't get away from police like they used to. It's a different analysis. It's not a generation of criminals, it's a generation of criminalization. You in a mental institution, we take the money away from a mental institution and put you on the street. Then we make it illegal to be on the street through these state laws. And so now people who are in mental institutions are now in jail. We have you on drugs and medicalized treatment in mental facilities. You're now on the street and you self-medicate. And at the same time that you self-medicate, and you pour what hits the streets in '84, crack. So now you got this synthetic cheap drug that you use to self-medicate because you don't have the structural resources anymore. And then we prosecute a war on drugs that didn't work because drugs are cheaper, easier to get, and stronger than ever. And then you end up in jail for that. And then you end up homeless, and the homeless get hidden and erased through mental institutions, or rather through prison, and so we have a transcarcerative state. In other words, you was in a place for support and care, and now you're in a place of containment and blame. And then you get into prison and there's no resources. There's no mental health support. There's no education. We take away loans. We take away grants. You're subject to sexual trauma. And then you get out and you can't get a job, you can't vote, you can't get public housing, and you can't get education. This is a system. But if you just look at the analysis of people being in prison, what are all the things that get you there? You're not honoring the legacy of King. The legacy of King is to discern wisely. It's to ask different questions. One more thing. I believe the legacy of King is largely also committed to brave action. To brave action. King was one of the most courageous freedom fighters we've ever seen. Why? Because King was willing to act bravely. What does it mean to act bravely? For King, it was a commitment to the project of nonviolence. We can reduce or dismiss nonviolence to pacifism and simplistic cowardice even. But there's nothing more courageous than nonviolence. Now, don't get me wrong. That ain't the only game in town. That ain't my thing. I believe in nonviolence as a tactic. That as an overarching philosophy. However, King's commitment to nonviolence was stunning. This moral idea that nonviolence may not stop you from hating me, but it may stop me from hating you. And that matters. King's vision of brave action was one of international connection, national and international connection. We organize locally, but we engage in mass action. If dogs bite us in Birmingham, we bleed everywhere. As King grew in his own analysis, King understood even more the significance of internationalization. King understood even more the value of connecting across borders. King understood that there was no way to talk about the Negro in Birmingham without talking about the Negro and the African in Accra, Ghana, or struggling for freedom in apartheid South Africa, or struggling for liberation in Sudan. He understood the connection. What does that mean for us? For us, it means that we must engage in brave action. To act bravely means you gotta do something really important, y'all. You gotta act. You gotta do something. If you don't remember anything else I told y'all tonight, remember this. The biggest problem in the world today is that there are too many people who don't do anything. Everybody can't lead a march. People are constrained by their economic condition. They're constrained by their family situations. They're constrained by their ability status. I don't want to be narrow or elitist or ableist in how I understand what engagement looks like, but everybody can do something. I'm not against hashtag activism. I'm not against online activism. It shouldn't be the only thing we do, but it can be a component of what we do. I'm not against cultural politics. I'm not against making music or wearing a jacket or having a hashtag or wearing a hairstyle that serves as a force of resistance. It ain't the only thing we should be doing, but everybody can do something. But the biggest problem is that so many of us fail to respond to anything. Elections get stolen. Children get killed. Unsafety prevails in our immediate community. Hunger is around us, homelessness is around us, and too many of us don't do anything. To act bravely is to join an organization. We need organized action. King represented a model of organized action. It ain't the only model of organized action, but it is important to join an organization. I didn't say start an organization. I said, what? Join an organization. Everybody, I go to college campuses all the time, everybody wants to start an organization. It'd be 50 black people on campus and 25 organizations. Everybody president and vice president. The legacy of King can seduce you and confuse you into thinking that the model of organized action is the charismatic, cisgendered, hetero male in front. But the model of leadership that we have to understand is one of organized action with many people, that is diverse, that is multicultural, that is multi-gendered, that has different gender performances, that have different ethnic backgrounds, different religious and non-religious orientations. We need a complicated social movement made up of people who are willing to act and organize, even if they don't get a microphone, even if they don't get put in charge of something, even if they don't get their way. We must continue to organize and struggle together in movements, even when you're not in charge, because if you only join the organization when you're in charge, or when you get your name in the paper, or you get the byline, or you get on CNN, then the movement is not being advantaged. You are. That ain't about the movement, that's about you. And the legacy of King, as King said in '68, the legacy of King is one of what? Dangerous unselfishness. Dangerous unselfishness. That means that you must join and commit to the organization even when you don't get your way, but there's a long history of us not doing that. Go to any black neighborhood in America, you see Second Baptist Church. You know why there's Second Baptist Church? It was just Baptist Church before. And then folks fall out. Folks disagree. Folks don't get their part in the choir. Folk don't make the deaconess board. Folk get told their chicken tastes nasty. Next thing you know, Second Baptist Church. Some cities, Third Baptist. We need a new model of leadership. The King model shows us what inspired and dangerous unselfishness looks like, but we can also correct the model and say that we don't need another generation of movements only led by men. We don't need another generation of movements only led by heterosexual people. We don't need another movement only led by cisgendered people. We don't need another generation of movements that only exist in the church. We need a range of movements and actions that lead people where we want to go. To act bravely is to commit to that kind of organization. To act bravely is to make your organizations do what they're supposed to do. King looked at his Baptist convention and said, family, we're not doing what we're supposed to do. If we're honoring the spirit of Jesus Christ, we gotta honor the spirit of a revolutionary Jesus Christ. We gotta honor the spirit of a radical Palestinian Jew that overturned tables. They got rid of money changers. That was committed to changing the world. To preach good news to the poor, to heal the brokenhearted, to free the captive. King was saying we have to make this organization do what it's supposed to do. So many of you on college campuses, I'm asking you to make your organization do what it's supposed to do. You a young Democrat. Small D. What kind of Democrat do you want to be? Do you want to be a neoliberal Democrat? Do you want to worship the market? Do you want to be dragged so far to the center that anything left of Donald Trump looks radical? Or do you want to be a true Democrat that believes in a social safety net, that believes that we have to protect the vulnerable, that believes we have to free the captive, that believes we have to invest in people again? What kind of Democrat do you want to be? Y'all have a campus NAACP? Right. What kind of NAACP you want to be? You want to be a happy to be in the room NAACP? An NAACP that'll just show up to Trump Tower smiling? I had a meeting with the president. Are you an NAACP that just wants to build wealth and privatize everything? Do you want to be nothing but an extension of a Democratic Party that has exploited you? Or do you want to be a W.E.B. Du Bois NAACP? Do you want to be an Ida B. Wells Barnett NAACP? Do you want to stop the lynchings that happen every day? Do you want to expand democracy every day? Do you want to free the captive every day? What kind of NAACP do you want to be? Y'all got black Greeks on campus. But what kind of black Greeks y'all want to be? Do y'all want to be happy to be in the room? Black Greeks? Do you want to be purely focused on strolling, ape walking, barking? Do you only want to focus on what you did to get into the organization? Or do you want to focus on what you do once you get into the organization? Because there's a difference in our tradition. What did your founders want you to do? Did they want you to just get in? I ain't saying skate, I'm saying once you get in, what you gonna do? Can you imagine walking through college bragging about your high school essay? Yo, I worked on this joint for 8 weeks, 5 days, 22 minutes, and 50 seconds. And you failing all your classes. Walk around talking about you good. And you're good for nothing. Who do you want to be? If you're going to build on campus, build something. If you got a line full of cues, give them some tutors, teach them how to read, and then have them teach the kids how to read. Oftentimes, African-American children don't get exposed to the arts. They don't get exposed to recreational sports. They don't get exposed to things like ice skating. Get a group of alphas. Nobody knows how to skate like alphas. Get them there. I had an iota joke, but what's the point, right? There's like 3 of them. 2 of their founders are over there. They're graduating this year. Where was I? Dr. King. Dr. King, Dr. King, Dr. King. Family, if we are going to engage in brave action, we have to be committed to fearlessness. King was a truth teller even when it was difficult. If we're going to engage in brave action, King wasn't just brave in '63 when he told folk to not fight back. He was brave in '68 when he fought against the American war machine. Malcolm wasn't just brave in 1964 when he's talking tough, he's also brave when he's trying to bring America into the International Court for Human Rights Abuses. There is a way in which our bravery has to extend beyond the local, and it certainly has to extend beyond our narrow partisan politics. Some of y'all was marching with me in 04 against Bush's drones, and when Obama started shooting drones to Yemen and Somalia, y'all ain't said nothing yet. If you're going to be courageous at all times. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said what? He said, "Qul al-haq wa in kana mar," and speak the truth, though it may be bitter. And we are in a bitter moment. We need bravery at all turns. I need you to speak out, not just when it's convenient, but when it is not. If you living in occupied Palestine, if you living in the largest open-air prison in the world in Gaza, if you in the occupied West Bank, if your homes are being destroyed in the settlements in the 48 territories, if you're not having access to fresh drinking water in the 67 territories, if you're being blocked in Rafah, you don't care whether it's Bush or Trump or Obama or Clinton or Carter. We can't afford to be purely partisan. We must operate on principle. I know y'all tired. I'm ready to go. I'm gonna leave y'all alone. But principle renders you in this space of king what I like to call radical solitude. King often felt alone. King often felt alone. 1968, King wasn't Times Man of the Year anymore like he was in 63. In 1968, King couldn't make People magazine's Most Admired Americans lists. In 1968, King couldn't get a American Program Bureau couldn't book Martin Luther King Jr. Schools wouldn't have him on campus. King was stabbed before he was shot, years before he was shot, by a black person. All your skin folk ain't your kinfolk. King, Morehouse College wouldn't let Martin Luther King Jr. on the board of trustees. They said King was a bad influence on young people. Said he went to jail too much. See, history will always redeem you because history is written backwards. Life is lived forward. You have to live without consideration of what it means to be liked. Because if you go all around this world and everybody like you, something probably wrong with you. If everybody like you, you probably not struggling for freedom. If everybody like you, you probably ain't got no principle. If everybody like you, you probably not happy deep inside. If everybody like you, you ain't operating right. If everybody like you, the world ain't getting better. Those of us who operate in a tradition of king understand that there will be moments where you will be hated and despised, but you ain't worried about that because you know something bigger is coming up behind you. If you are understanding the legacy of king, you don't worry about being alone because you know that the struggle for freedom is to be alone. So you're on college campuses right now and you feel alone. You come to college and you read your books, you read your theory, you learn about these complicated ideas, and after you read them, you go back to the hood and you go back to your family, and people are like, oh, you think you're smart because you went to college and read a couple books, and it makes you feel alone. You're on your college campus and you're struggling to organize your friends, and when you have a step show, especially when the Noops is out, when you have a step show, 5,000 people show up. When you have an informational or educational session, only 5 people show up. I know you feel alone. When it's time to come to the party, everybody wants to be here. When it's time to organize a movement, nobody shows up. I know you feel alone. You got friends that are liberal, and they love liberal issues, and they liberal on every issue but Israel. I know you feel alone. I ain't scared of y'all. You got people who are radical on the question of race, but when gender comes up, everybody turned into Hotep Harry. I know you feel alone. There are moments where you talking about gender and race, but sexuality and transgender identity somehow complicates the conversation, and everybody runs and they act like, I can't deal with a transgender bathroom. Negro, you had a transgender bathroom in your grandmama's house. It wasn't male, it wasn't female, it was just a bathroom. Grow up. I know you feel alone. Some of y'all work with white folk, good white folk. They love black people till it's time to hire one. I know you feel alone. But that's what this tradition is about. Harriet Tubman was alone. Black women been leading Negroes to freedom for hundreds of years, and they've always been alone. Martin stood on that stage, but when Martin couldn't find his groove, it was Mahalia that stood there on August 28, 1963, and said, Martin, tell him about the dream. I know you felt alone. Harriet Tubman had to lead folk to freedom. That's where y'all at right now. Follow the tradition, not just of Martin, but of Harriet. Leading Negroes to freedom even when you feel alone, especially when you feel alone. Because there are moments where you got to round up the people and tell them that it's time to go. Negroes singing, glory gonna come in the morning. Steal away to Jesus. They wasn't just gospel songs. They was telling Negroes tomorrow morning be by the tree. We out. And Harriet had to round up all these Negroes and not just get them out, but convince them to leave. She said, I freed hundreds of black people. She said, I could have freed hundreds more if only they would have known they were slaves. It is your job right now when you're feeling alone to convince the people around you. And I'm not just talking to black folk. White folk, you got the stake in this too, because we can't get free till everybody get free. You got to let go of white supremacy. You got to let go of white privilege. We got to let go of patriarchy. We got to let go of heterosexism. We got to let go of cisgender norm. We got to let go of class arrogance. We got to let go of a lot of stuff. But when you're doing that work, you got to convince people that something is better than what they got right here. That democracy is unfinished. Obama made you feel good, we can do better. Trump makes you feel whatever, we damn sure can do better. The world can be better. You got to convince them to be by that tree and to start moving through the woods for freedom. And when you convince them to move through the woods for freedom, people get scared. They start moving through the woods and they say, I want to go back. Home was safe. Home was comfortable. I knew what home looked like. I don't know what the future is going to look like. Negroes get afraid when you start talking about a world without prisons. When you start talking about ending the occupation of Palestine. When you start talking about ending militarism. When you start talking about ending Islamophobia. Negroes get scared as they walk into the woods to freedom and they want to turn back. And that's when Harriet got the shotgun. This little black woman would convince them and cajole them and inspire them to freedom. And when them 6'5" Negroes got scared, she knocked them on the head and dragged them to freedom. They woke up in Massachusetts, where am I? Nigga, you're free.
I think I speak for all of UConn just saying, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Doctor, for taking time out of your busy schedule to celebrate this very, very special day. As he mentioned, you cannot soundbite the message, but I think there's some important points for us to keep in mind taking away around deep listening, around brave action, around fearlessness, and around treating people with humanity and really challenging yourself. How are you advocating for humanity, for love, for social justice? So I want to thank you again, Dr. Mark Lamont Hill. At this time, we do have a few minutes minutes for Q&A. There are microphones to my left and my right. Mr. Michael Mallory and Dr. Patricia Jepson will be standing next to the microphones. We have a time for about 2 questions. I apologize for the brevity, but we have time for 2 questions. And we'd like for, however the question...
I apologize, I went long. I was not supposed to talk this long. We're gonna do more than 2 questions. I'll answer them quickly, but let's see who comes up. I'll answer them quickly, but if you have questions, come up. I'll answer them quickly. We'll take this whole thing will take 12 minutes.
That sounds good.
All right, but just if you have questions, come up. Don't feel like only 2, because that's not cool. That's my fault.
No, he's fine. See, when you're the keynote speaker, you can do that. See, I don't have to, Dr. Price and him have the agreement, so I was just doing what I was told.
No, I appreciate that, and thank you for protecting my time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm supposed to be out right now, but I arrived a little bit late as well because of traffic. So again, I'm happy to answer questions, so, and not just 2.
Absolutely. So if those who have questions, we just ask if you can come to the front. Obviously, keep your questions as concise and direct as possible.
Make them questions. They end in question marks. They're short. You don't tell me what you think about the world. Don't sell me no mixtapes. Just question.
I just have one statement. His book, Nobody, is at the UConn bookstore, so make sure you purchase that.
That's a good one.
Book signing.
I'll be signing the book as well. There'll be a book signing at the store. There's a reception after. There's a lot of stuff happening. But let's roll. I know y'all gotta go too, so I wanna make sure we create time for everything. Somebody got to, okay.
Hi,
Greetings.
I'm Hannah. I'm just wondering, I work in the media, and I'm wondering how the media can do better.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are a few things. One is we need to diversify who's in the conversation, right? I've been talking about Palestine for the last few minutes, so that's the first thing that comes to mind. We'll talk about Palestine, but there won't be Palestinians on TV talking about the issue, right? That's crazy to me. And I'm happy to debate Alan Dershowitz, but get Rula Jibril. Get, Ahmed Abu-Sneg. I mean, there are lots of people who can do this much better than I could. Get Deanna Butu. I think we often think about media representation as being what's in front of the camera, but it's far more important to talk about what's behind the camera. So we need producers who are diverse. I can't have a newsroom if I don't have people of all genders, of all races. We need diverse representation. I want representation of everybody behind the camera. It's also about the stories that we tell. Partly it's about how you tell a story, but it's also about which stories you tell. So I can talk about a police shooting in a particular way, right? That will make you sympathetic to one person or the other. We have to have a more complicated analysis. But it's also which stories we tell. If we're going to talk about a bombing in France, we also have to talk about a bombing in Lebanon. Because if we don't, then that becomes a problem. Anti-Semitism is on the rise in France, just as one example, all over Europe. I mean, really around the world, I would argue. But certainly there's anti-Semitism in France. Why is that not a story to us, right? But other things are. We have to talk about sexual violence more, in more complicated and nuanced ways, not just on college campuses, but around the globe. There are things that we must do to tell different stories so that people know that these things matter. We had to fight to get the Nigerian girls, the Chibok girls, represented on TV, the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. That's right, we had to do that. That's important. So it's about representation, it's about behind the camera, it's about which stories we tell. Yeah, next question. Brother right back there with the red shirt or burgundy shirt. You stand up, brother. There we go. I think a mic is coming to you. I just wanted them to see you.
Hi, my name is Eddie. I wanted to ask you, because you work as a political commentator for CNN.
Yeah.
Does the delegitimization of the media scare you like a large part of the country, when someone as respected and revered as John Lewis speaks out, that a lot of those people attack him?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually didn't agree with John Lewis entirely on this. I mean, I respect John Lewis. I love John Lewis. Just as an aside, I think after spending 8 years defending the legitimacy of Obama's campaign, I thought it was an interesting move to then say Trump's not legitimate. It's one thing to say Trump is a bad president, or Trump is unfit to be president, or Trump is immoral, or Trump should be impeached. But to actually question the legitimacy of his candidacy, I thought was a little bit interesting, given that's what we were critiquing Trump for. But it's also like a fascinating baiting tactic, because Trump is so thin-skinned that Trump can't respond Trump can't not respond to anything. He's like Meek Mill on steroids, right? So for Trump, so it was a fascinating thing to watch happen. I think social media, I think this has always happened. I think social media makes it more apparent. When I tweet something, I get love, I get hate. Those people always hated me when I was on TV. I just now can see the hate more immediately. So I think social media makes something appear more pronounced than it otherwise is. But I think it also creates a very dangerous space because it becomes a very toxic environment, and it often takes the place of more reputable and rigorous journalism. And that's what concerns me the most. Not so much the idea of fake news. It's always been fake news. And I think it's the lack of kind of critical media literacy that many of us have, so we can't tell the difference between a story that is real and a story that's not. I want that to become our ability. And I think that's where classrooms become important. I think that's where the next generation of schools become really critical in teaching people how to consume media differently so that we don't have a generation of college students that think doing research is going to Wikipedia. Right? So we have a group of people who think that every website or every blog is the same. And I know that's not everybody, but that's many people. So let's engage that and take that seriously. My brother right here, you have a question? Yeah, make sure you get the microphone.
Hi, my question is looking at kind of the current political makeup of the government, which is currently Republican controlled and executive branch, legislative branch, etc.
Yeah.
What can we do pragmatically with the very limited political power we have in those organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think about all of the difficulties the president had, the current president Obama has. I'm going to call him the current president for 4 more days. I'm going to ride this thing out as long as possible. Had with a supermajority for 2 years. Because his voting base challenged them, right? So, for example, what was the issue? Offshore drilling. Another issue was basically Obamacare is produced as an idea and presented, but there were 2 or 3 other issues that were also critical. That Blue Dog Democrats said, no, we can't, even though there's 60 of us, the Blue Dogs can't advance this because our voting blocks within our respective districts won't allow us to be successful. Our states won't advance this, right? We're Democrats, but we have to appeal to our voting base. And so as a result, certain kinds of progressive agenda items that you think would get pushed through with 60 senators and majority in the House and a Democratic president didn't. So I think despite the fact that Republicans are in control of both chambers of Congress, we still have the ability to challenge and demand more from our senators, to demand more from our governors around politics. So much of the power has come down to the state level. We have to be able to resist that as well. One of the things the Republicans did very brilliantly over the last 30 years is take power even more and more to the state level, so who the president is matters a little bit less. Who the governor is and who's in state legislature matters a lot. We can organize in that way. The other thing we can do is prepare for 2018. 2018 is around the corner. It's 2017 now. So in 12 months or 11 months, people are going to really be campaigning hard for what? For this next election cycle. So we need to be generating candidates, we need to be organizing, we need to be raising money right now. We need to put a spotlight on these candidates so that they're unable to operate with impunity. We have to challenge them at all costs and at all terms. That's the only way. There's something called the doctrine of a permanent campaign that really kind of emerges in Bill Clinton and really becomes mastered under Karl Rove and George Bush. These candidates are always campaigning, they're always testing opinion polls, they're always like weather vanes, and as a result of that kind of obsession with polls, we have the ability, I think, to challenge the kind of policies that get advanced, and I think we can do that through organized action, and I think that's where the organizations come in. Thank you. Yes. I think we have to take 2 more hands or 3 more, and then we're good.
Hi, my name is Holden. I'm a senior journalism student, and my question for you is, how do you respond to critiques on legitimacy as a journalist, as well as policing your ability to be multidimensional and nuanced simply because you're both a political commentator on CNN, as well as on VH1 interviewing someone like Masika Kalisha or Miss Nikki Baby?
Well, I've never been asked that before. That's a good question. That's an interesting question. I've never been asked to defend my legitimacy as a journalist. That's never happened before. I think the question for me is always, how rigorous is the work, how engaged is it? I've never desired to be kind of placed in a narrow box, right? So I've never, as an academic, I've never needed to, I'm an anthropologist, but I never felt the need to only be identified as such, right? I never felt the need to be, I think about Du Bois, right? You can call him a sociologist or you can call him an intellectual, right? You could call Bell Hooks a cultural critic, you could call Bell Hooks a lot of things. Bell Hooks is one of the towering intellectuals of the 20th century. And I wouldn't fit her into a narrow box. She pursues ideas to the natural end. Du Bois wrote fiction, he wrote nonfiction, he wrote short stories. Bell Hooks has written children's books and short stories. I mean, there are these interesting moments, I think, where people have the opportunity to do lots of different things and to not be narrowly boxed in. So I don't think that who I am as an intellectual or who I am as a journalist is cheapened or undermined by the fact that I'm willing to operate in many different areas. Now, I think there's a more interesting and probably apt critique of my work on VH1, which is, do the representations that I engage in that space compromise my politics? And I think that's a legitimate question and a fair one. That might have been a tacit part of your question as well, you just being polite, right? Like how you interviewing basketball wives and then talking about progressive gender politics. I assume that's the implicit question, right? I think that's a fair implicit question. I think my answer to that question would be, you probably can't. And there are moments where there are irreconcilable differences or tensions in these two different projects. And what I've tried to do is resolve those tensions on the side of progressive politics. So when I took the job at VH1, it was supposed to be a political show, a sports-based show. It was supposed to be kind of a really interesting progressive show. That didn't happen week 1, that didn't happen week 2. If you continue to watch the show, about week 4 or 5, you began to see me talking about state violence, I'm talking about Colin Kaepernick, I'm doing these monologues to camera, and I'm not interviewing basketball wives or Stevie J all the time. 90% of the time I'm interviewing guests who I think are interesting and bring something to the conversation. So the show kind of developed. So if you reduce the show to week 1, I think your critique would be fair. I think if you get to episode 12, you see a very different show. And a show that I'm very proud of. I'm not ashamed to do entertainment. Some of my favorite interviews ever were on HuffPost Live. I was interviewed where I would sit down with Nas, or I would sit down with, you know what I mean? Mike Tyson, Snoop, Judith Light, really random array of people, right? Axl Rose, or Slash rather, Axl coming. There was a really interesting array, and that brought me joy. Before I was an academic, I was listening to music. Before I was critiquing TV, I was watching it. And so I want to be able to operate in all those spaces. As long as I can do so with integrity, I'm happy. Again, there are moments where I have fallen short. And I think VH1 is a moment where I'm open to a legitimate critique. But I think I'm trying to repair that and continue to build and grow. And that's why when the show comes back on the 2nd week of March, check your local listings, I think you'll see a very different show. I also have a show on BET that's about to come out, a Sunday morning news show, which will be more in line with what people probably expect from me. So I think you'll see me operating continually in these different areas. Yeah. Yeah.
How you doing?
Well, there were 2 hands up, right? What was the other hand? Okay, all right, here's what we're gonna do, because we're running out of time. Can you both ask your question at once, and I'll answer it all at once, that way, yeah.
All right, so
yeah, take them both at the same time, yeah. And I'm sorry, there's 3 of you, so boom, boom, boom. Right here, my friend here, and then here, and I'll answer them all at once. So just the question.
Me?
Yes.
So I'm still in high school, and the topics that you've been discussing are not really added into our curriculum. So how do we as a student body add this into the conversation?
That's a great question. Yes.
So my question is, how do we encourage young Black people to take risk and open up their own businesses to keep the dollar in the communities?
Cool. And there's the final question right here with the sister.
Hi. On the topic of fake news or illegitimate news is something that's been circulating within the news community, especially in the past couple of months after its role in the last presidential election. So what advice do you give to millennials, young people who have been growing up in a society where there's 24/7 news? There are statistics that show that a lot of young people get their news from social media. We've seen the emergence of new news agencies to like secular news or Young Turks, and now there's like this competition kind of between like the old news and the new news.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think part of the problem is that it's a market-driven circumstance, right? So there's 24-hour news, so it's not like the old days when you had 3 channels. So everybody has news, and part of the money is in having a new story all the time. At CNN, we got breaking news like every 5 minutes. Even if nothing's breaking, right? Like breaking news, nothing's happened yet. You know, it's like, there's this way in which we have to operate in a sense, with this sense of urgency and immediacy. And I think that what that produces is sometimes unfinished stories, uninvestigated stories, uninterrogated stories, or just flat out made up stories, right? Not on CNN or Fox or MSNBC, but on the kind of off-brand outlets and some of the smaller outlets you'll often see really unvetted stuff happening. So I think the work we have to do, in my estimation, is those of us who are in mainstream media to be diligent about it, and those of us who are coming up, like you said, in that generation of folk who are engaging all this stuff, is to develop critical media literacy. How do you do that? Use, check out watchdog organizations like Media Mobilizing Project, like Center for Progressive Media, other outlets that help you kind of interrogate and discern what's real news from what's not real news, right? All of that helps. And then we need, those of us who are in a position to understand the distinctions, have to teach critical media literacy. We need to teach folk how to discern one site from another, how to investigate facts, how to fact check people, how to get references, how to assume, how to read a study, all these things that often don't happen. So I think that's the work we have to do, and that speaks to this question, the middle question, which was around getting people organized. Ultimately, we have to have a vision of self. We need to organize, we need to build. Some of the building will come through government subsidies, some of the building will happen through funding. Some of it has to do with us. At one level, we have to look in the mirror and see the value in ourselves, right? I have to know that like, your ice is just as cold as somebody else's, right? So going to your store or your dry cleaner or your restaurant is a valuable thing because the black dollar leaves the community faster than any other community in the United States. We have to build that stuff. We have to support one another. We have to form co-ops. We have to have a kind of democratic socialist vision of what our world is going to be, minimally democratic socialist, so that we can support one another and invest in one another. But there are things we can do right now. For example, there's food insecurity. People have to go 3 and 4 miles for fresh fruit and vegetables because they don't have access or they don't have resources, they don't have cars, and they can't afford it. So if you're dealing with food insecurity, we can build a community garden right now. That community garden not only will give people healthy options, but it'll prevent people from taking that dollar and going and buying something unhealthy at a local convenience store where the money doesn't stay. There are options that we have that will not only make us healthier, but will also make us more financially whole. I think we also need financial literacy because of teaching people to save, or how to save, teaching people, resisting exploitative features or forces like rush cards and check cashing places to cash a check where they take 2-3%. These are things that we can, there are things that we can do, teaching people to invest or how to invest in ways that make them safer, but recognizing the constraints of it. Like my man said in Atlanta, like, poor people too broke to invest. Right? Like, I don't want to invest, I don't have the money to. So we have to think about ways to reach people where they are and not operate from this kind of bourgeois class position on this. But that comes down to this question of organizing, which is why I want to finish with your wonderful question, which is, how do we get this stuff in school? So there are 2 answers I give you. One is, power, as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. School ain't just gonna give it to you. You have to make the school give it to you, right? So you guys have to organize. You all have to come up with a curriculum that you want. You have to come up with texts that you want to see or themes that you want to address and talk to your parents about it, talk to your teachers about it. Get them to organize, get them to join school boards, get them to demand it in your classrooms. And then whenever you have the option of it or any flexibility, whether it's in senior English or junior English where you can pick a text or whatever, introduce ideas and texts that wouldn't otherwise be there. That can be part of your work. Across schools, in Philadelphia, I've worked with the Philadelphia Student Union for about a decade now. And part of what the Philadelphia Student Union does is it's a group of students who organize themselves across the district to fight for more resources, to fight for better representation, to fight for new curriculum. This is a long project, and to be honest with you, I don't want to give you any illusions. There's a really good chance that the students after you will benefit from it more than you will, but it's still worth doing. But then the last piece of this, and I'm gonna say goodbye to y'all, is don't let schooling get in the way of your education, right? Schooling is about credentials and bureaucracy and stamps, and you need that. I ain't saying don't finish school, y'all. Don't be like, I'm dropping out tomorrow because Dr. Hill said don't let school. I'm saying you can do both, right? You can get the credential, you can do this stuff, whether it's in college or high school, you can get this information. But a lot of the stuff that you want to learn and you want to read, you can form your own groups. I mean, social media allows you to read a book online. It allows you to have a reading group online. It allows you to have a Google Hangout where y'all can talk about the new Jim Crow. Or you can talk about Eve Sedgwick, epistemology of the closet, if y'all, you know, on some advanced gender theory stuff. Like there are things you can do. I grew up in a black bookstore, so I didn't have the option of going to school and reading Marimba Ani, Yorugu. So I went and read Yorugu at Hakim's bookstore. I read Message to the Black Man at Basic Black Books in the gallery next to the Cinnabon. I went and got another education, what we call a dual. Do that, I think you'll be okay. Everybody, I love you. You all good love, healthy choices, and second chances. God bless you. Free the land, free the men.
Wow, thank you all for being here. And we have one more thing. We have all these wonderful high school students, middle and high school students. Susie, where are you? Your whole crowd, come up and get ready to give these awards to these marvelous, marvelous young people. Susie, Mitten Shannon, Nemo Nix, and Noor Elijah. Come on up quickly, and let's get this show on the road, all right? Thank you, ma'am. It's good business.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So we're going to try and go as fast as we can.